We're on the rails heading towards a mysterious land. A land surrounded by sea and mystery. A land of thought and set of mind. Look up ahead at the sign. It's the island of Twilight. It's here on this island we meet a big express engine named Gresham. He who prides himself on his strength and his inability to appear late at his destinations. A tough chap he is, but how long will his self-reliance last in the face of nature? It was a bitter, cold, and wintry day on Sodor. Passenger trains and freight had a schedule to keep, though the snow drifts and the massive amounts of ice that dangled from the tunnels and the bridges above the rails lay a hazardous trail for the engines of Sodor. Gordon waited at Knapford with his morning express. The express had to be slowed due to falling ice and slippery rails. Gresham waited patiently next to Gordon, but as the minutes ticked by, he started to lose it. Oh, these lazy workers are going to keep us from our schedule. We're important engines and we deserve to arrive on time. Gordon took no notice. You usually would agree, but even he knew, with the common knowledge that you don't try to fight nature. Gresham, my dear, you are ignorant. Well, it is important that we keep to our schedule. We cannot control the changes nature makes. You must proceed with caution today on the rails. Pah! Gresham scoffed. A little snow on the rails can't stop me. I'm a mass of 98 tons of cast iron. A bit of frozen water won't stop me from keeping my straight-A record. Don't say I didn't warn you, replied Gordon, as he blew his whistle and left the station. Gordon knew he was running behind, but it wasn't his fault that nature made the rails so dangerous. Snow and ice is not something to take for granted. Gordon looked around as he puffed along, making sure there was no ice anywhere. I sure hope, Gresham, that boastful Pratt took my advice, said Gordon to himself. It was late at night by the time Gordon returned. Gresham waited with his night train at the station for him. Where the bloody hell have you been? My passengers are cross and want to go home. Take your time, said Gordon. Temperature has dropped, ice will be on the tracks. Gresham just scoffed and rolled his eyes. I refuse to believe that an engine of Sir Nigel Gresley is requesting that I go slow. Gordon lost patience. Fine. Don't take my advice then. Take it with a grain of salt. Just take it as a friendly warning. Ice is dangerous. You don't want to fight with it. Gresham got more annoyed and more crosser. You just want to destroy my spotless record. Now Gordon was cross. I certainly do not care for your record. I care about passengers' safety, and I care about yours, you fool. And Gordon puffed away towards the sheds. I'll show you, you galloping sausage, replied Gresham. With that, Gresham left the station in a huff and a hurry. He began his journey and wasted no time getting up to speed. Though fully aware of the ice and snow and the fact that he was running behind by 5 minutes, he picked up his pace, now exceeding the speed limit by a dangerous amount. Gresham came to the summit of Gordon's Hill. He strained as he charged up the incline. Come on, I don't have time to waste. When he finally reached the summit, he smiled and cheered for himself, but then tore down the decline at an alarming rate of speed. He noticed a curve coming up ahead. It was a very hard curve. It wasn't enough to take the speed that he was going at. But he didn't care. He relied on his brakes. Curve ahead. Time to ease on the brakes, driver. As the curve drew nearer, his driver applied the brakes, but it was no use. He slid on the track like a hockey puck. It wasn't hard to tell what happened when his wheels made contact with the curve. As his wheels cut across the rails onto the fields, his coaches all butted each other and shattered to pieces. His passengers screamed in horror at the face of death, as the coaches rolled over 80 yards before coming to a stop. Gresham's wheels digged into the soil. His boiler was crushed and his pistons exploded, and the last thing he saw before his end was the ground crashing into his smoke box. Silence fell upon the field of the wreck site before the agonizing moans and groans emitted from the wreckage of the coaches. An hour later, the Fat Controller met the engines in the shed. "There's been an accident at Gordon's Hill," he said. "It's not a pretty sight, so I'm going to need some volunteers." Gordon feebly answered, "I'll help, sir." "Are you sure, Gordon?" "Yes, sir." Gordon knew and had a knot-like feeling in his boiler when he heard this news. He knew it had to be Gresham. "I'll volunteer too, sir," said Edward. Both Blue engines got ready with the breakdown train and some scrap cars. The police and firefighters surrounded the crash site with paramedics trying to save those who were trapped under the rubble. As Harold circled overhead with his searchlights on, many white sheets appeared on the field, all covering up a life lost. Gordon and Edward pulled in with cranes and trucks. Edward went about with the freight trucks, while Gordon positioned the cranes to lift the tattered and torn remains of Gresham. As the husk of his boiler and cab were lowered onto a low loader, Gordon looked glumly at his buffers. And then he faced the vacant smokebox door of Gresham's boiler. "I warned you to be careful. And now look at yourself. And look at what you've done to your passengers." As we depart from the island of adventure, mystery, and myth, we learn a valuable lesson from either our own mistakes or others who make mortal mistakes. We can only look at ourselves when at one point we were prideful and felt strong, and learn from Gresham as to what pride gets us on the island of Twilight.